Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.
Hey y'all, Dave Mopper here. Welcome in. This pod is a compilation of lessons in fatherhood and leadership. I'm using it to explore the path to raising legends, and I'm sharing it all with you. Each episode provides a really raw and unique perspective on fatherhood, and it's what I've come to love about these conversations. There is something for every father who's in growth mode. All right, enjoy the combo. Mike Salemi, welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad.
Thanks for having me, brother. Excited to be here, man.
I've been just jonesing, chomping at the bit to get in the fatherhood weeds with you. And here we are. Mike, you're coming off of an epic experience that you curated as part of your professional forte, which is it's got some variety to it. What would you say at the heart of your work? What do you do at the heart of your work?
Well, first thing I'll say is the work that I do, one of the things that I realized at this most recent retreat, which was, I think just a little over a week ago, I had this realization that like there's so many different, I'll say brands or styles or approaches to men's work. Like men's work is such a big word. You know what it means from your experience. I know what it means from my experience. And there's so many different ways it can look. Like what I've really settled on is men's work is the work that so many of us men desperately need. And I think it's really easy. I've had some great teachers in the embodiment realm, in the fitness realm, in the breathwork realm. But I really settled on in this retreat just the recognition, not just the intellectual knowing, but the heart-centered knowing in my bones that my style of men's work doesn't need to look like anybody else's.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to look like whatever it's going to look like. So, when I see friends of mine who are leading men's work and like certain things, like I've experienced those versions and I'm like, man, that is so dope. Like that fucking takes in deep. Yeah. And I'm like, mine has much more of I would say of a vitality focus.
Okay.
It's not Navy SEAL type training. We're going to break you down. Like there is a point where my intention is to stretch men for sure. But there's a large focus on vitality, a large focus on putting men in positions, and every single thing that we put guys through or give them the opportunity to experience is, like I said, intended to stretch them, to challenge them in as safe of a way as possible. But that might mean no cell phones for 4 days, which some guys are going to be freaking out. Yeah. There's movement every single day, Qigong in the morning. There's always some typical, with these peak experiences, some type of rite of passage or initiation experience. So in this retreat, it was the sweat lodge. So at the heart of my work, there's a large focus on vitality, first and foremost, because one of the things that I've realized in this work is so many men, they might have powerful and profound experiences when they're at a retreat or doing work. What I've really realized is if they're not taking care of themselves, so if they're not sleeping, if they're not eating a decent diet, if they don't have practices during the day, breathwork practices or ways to get their day started, it is so easy to fall back into old patterns. So my brand of men's work focuses largely on vitality. And then at the heart of my work, especially with the type of people I'm largely supporting these days, they're typically men that have achieved some level of success, largely in business, whether it's in their career, their business, etc. But as a result of going all in on that, right, making achievement their sense of self-worth and how they derive value in the world, meaning in the world, status in the world, largely one of two things starts to collapse or starts to really fall by the wayside. And it's typically, like I said earlier, their vitality. So they start heading down the path of burnout. Now that could be physical pain, sleep challenges, irritability, stress, or their relationships suffer, meaning they've made so much of their life about career that, truly deep down, they feel really alone. Or it's a lot of men have never even been modeled what a healthy relationship looks like or what healthy fatherhood looks like. So typically they've doubled down in one area, but as a result, they've lost these other two. So my work largely is to not, really encouragement. Like, you don't gotta leave, and I don't want people to abandon the success that they've achieved. Like, that's gotten them to a specific place. But how can we do so in a way that also elevates how they're showing up as fathers, how they're showing up as husbands? That it's not, if the world doesn't give them a pat on the back because of the amount of money in their bank account or the cars they drive, they're no less of a man. So I would say that's at the core of my work, is really a holistic focus of what men's work is in this development work. And it's giving men the opportunity to strengthen their own edges, so increase their capacity. So
Yeah.
capacity is a big part. I don't know if I did a great job of explaining it, but it's not one thing at the heart of my work, but vitality is one of the biggest central pillars or central themes of it.
So I hear three things: vitality, capacity,
Mm,
and well-roundedness in a sense.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, nice work. And you come from this, from a physical realm of high performers, just throwing weight around, just an absolute beast. Tell us a little bit about your accolades in that realm. What did it look like 20 years ago? What did it look like 10 years ago? What does it look like today?
Yeah. So let's see. So I'm 38 today, but 38 right now. So 20 years ago, when I look at that point in my life, I was training for, in one organization, powerlifting. It's called the WABDL. I don't even know if they're still around because I don't not flowing in those circles anymore. But the World Association of Bench Pressers and Deadlifters. So at 18,
Mm.
I was right getting ready to travel to Westside Barbell, which, for those that aren't familiar, I would argue to say it's still the strongest gym in the world. I mean, multiple 900 plus pound squatters, 800 plus pound benchers, 800 plus pound deadlifters. It is a fucking gauntlet of a place. For anyone who wants to learn about Westside, there's a crazy documentary on Netflix called Westside Rules the World.
Wow.
And the owner of that gym, Louis Simmons, who I would say is he's really one of the greats, one of the biggest guys in that space, one of the greatest minds. And he recently passed away just a few years ago. But at 18, my whole life revolved around training and competing and training for the worlds.
Mm.
But what people didn't see was, on the background, was, on the surface, I was a good lifter, right? I had good numbers, and that's all I dedicated my life to. I trained in a small basement powerlifting gym, about 18 guys. That was my first exposure to, I would say, men's work. I didn't even realize that's what it was.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it was all men, no women. So all male mentors, blue collar guys, cops, firefighters, a lot of garbage men.
Mm.
And at that point, that was my life. But in the background, I had some pretty serious fungal infection. I had multiple parasites. I had a bacterial infection called H. pylori, which was causing stomach ulcers. I had did an adrenal panel again 20 years ago, and I was approaching stage 3 of adrenal fatigue. So my days were numbered. And actually, after I won the world championships in the bench and the deadlift, everything started breaking down. I took a quick pause, and then I started feeling all of the physical pain, the gut stuff. And I started working with a practitioner, a functional med guy.
Mm.
And he's like, man, if you keep heading down this path, like, I know you love lifting, but you won't be able to continue sustaining this unless you address this. So that set me on a 2 to 2.5 year process of really backing down my volume, backing down training, and healing the gut and healing these things. But what he told me is, like, you're going to need to take at least 6 months entirely off of lifting. And that, for someone who had grown up as an athlete, competed, like, my identity to me being a competitor, my friends, how they knew me, how I got value, and my self-esteem, it really felt like it was completely ripped away. So 20 years ago, that's really where I was. And then, through different sports or through different mentors, what I really started learning was, almost to a T, but it's a different flavor of what I've shared with the men's work. It wasn't in business by any means, but at the same time, it was, I had achieved a high level of success in one area or in one zone. But as a result, because I wasn't zooming out and I wasn't looking at my life in a holistic way, I was like, oh shit, didn't have any girlfriends, was so, one, I was so dedicated as an athlete, but also it was a way that I hid too. I was so afraid of getting rejected. I was so afraid of what if she doesn't like me. But on the surface, like if you look at me, I was charismatic, people liked me, good personality. So on the background, I had to really look at some of these things. And so over the years, through different mentors and through my own injuries, challenges, etc., I've really realized, man, how important it is to have good relations, how important it is to take care of my health. And then now my whole philosophy is holistic high performance. So how can we kick ass, not let go of that shit? Like I still want to be an animal, but also I want to do so and be present for my boy Luca. And so that was 20 years ago, man. That brought me back.
Well, yeah. Gosh, man, I was just thinking the catch-22 of being a man is we have the tenacity and the grit to pull off in the face of adversity and your body basically breaking down. You still, with your mind, basically overcame that or ignored it, or perhaps, ignorance was bliss in this moment. And that allowed you to achieve. And yet the catch-22 of it, of course, is that that wouldn't, that wasn't going to last forever. That's not longevity. And your example, as you noted, that was physical performance, but other things were taking the hit. And then a lot of guys kicking butt in the business world, but other things taking the hit. And we have a choice. We can either reactively try to sort things out, which is frankly what, if you're in your 30s and 40s and you just start realizing this, you're reacting. It's a reactive thing, which is better than not reacting.
Mm.
But what if we took a more proactive approach earlier on, and I don't know that whose fault is that, society's or, I don't know, but just interesting that anyone listening, if you're in your younger years, the sooner you get your world holistically wrangled, the sooner eventually the whole world comes together for you. But it takes some work, some it's a choice, just like many things. And I loved how we encountered each other because, I'm 44, performing well in certain areas, got a lot of good stuff going on, but my physical capacity feels limited compared to what I know, what my spirit
Mm.
tells me, right? So then I was like involved in, as you know, Apogee, and you were a guest speaker. And I don't know, man. I mean, you are such a likable dude, by the way, even though we've never met personally in the flesh. Like you feel like someone I've known for a couple decades, right? So you got that touch about you. And there was something that you helped me that struck me, which was the power of our language.
Mm.
And I inherently know this. I'm in the communications coaching space in corporate America, and I know how powerful our words can be. But to take full agency of that and to understand the correlation between our language and our identity, which you just said a little earlier, it was profound. And I was like, the second that call was over, I'm reaching out to Mike Salemi. Hey, what you up to, man? I don't know what you do exactly, but I'm hiring you and let's work together. Will you just describe a little bit about the work you do and maybe tie it into how it serves fathers in particular, even though it's serving men of all sorts and humans of all sorts, but the power of language and thinking about your narrative and articulating it, then backing away from it, integrating some breath and some relationship with it, saying it in a particular
Mm.
pace and rhythm, and how that, and of course, we don't have time to get into the actual process, but how integrating a new narrative can help us actually access these other realms and be elevated in performance there, because that's that I'm still thinking about every single day, some of the lines, some of the takeaways that you
Mm.
and I worked on. And I'm like, that's my new self. If I have the courage, perhaps, to go for that, if I have the focus and courage and the support from my family and so forth. But give me some quick skinny on the power of our narrative.
Yeah, it fits right into. There's so much that comes up there. There's two big examples. One with my son Luca, and then if we get to it, one we had a 17-year-old, a son, a father and a son come to this retreat, and
Cool.
I've been working with this kid, a young man, for 3 or 4 months. We weren't sure if he was ready for the retreat, but it came up and it was a hell yes for me. And so to have that, and we've done a lot of language work, right? So I'll definitely go into that. So the best definition, like when we hear the word mindset, right? We hear that word tossed around all the time, right? It's a buzzword. People have, if you asked 100 different people, you get 100 different definitions of what is mindset. And the simplest one, and the one that I really appreciate, is from my coach and friend, Mark England, who came up with a lot of the language work that I've guided you through. It's one of the main pillars in my work. There's a few big ones that I always utilize. Breath is one. This is called storywork. And so his definition of mindset is our mindset is just simply the stories that we tell ourselves. We're always telling ourselves a story, whether we did a good job, whether we did a shitty job, whether we showed up well, whether we fucked up, whether we're perfect, what all these stories, these narratives, whether you want to say the inner critic or limiting beliefs, assumptions, positive thinking, those are all built up on stories. And if you were to look at a story, so a narrative, and you were to take it down to its most fundamental level, like you extract what are the building blocks, the tangible building blocks of a story, you get words, right? So we can look at the specific, the mechanics of language. And when I reflect on my life and clients' life, there's two big reasons that keeps men stuck, keeps children stuck, and then it gets reinforced later in life. And it's the unresolved stories from the past, or the unintegrated stories from the past, right? As children, for example, one of the things that we see as kids that we're constantly searching for in relationship as we grow older is, what are the unmet needs? What are the things that we wanted so desperately from our caregivers, whether it was mom, dad, grandma, whoever played those roles, those people that were most important to us? What did we want so deeply and so bad that we never got? Maybe we got some of it, but not all of it. Like no parent is quote unquote perfect. And even if we show up 100% with presence, with love, with all that stuff, we will never be 100% everything that our kids need. That's just not how this world works. That's not how our psyche evolves, our ego evolves, etc. So one of the things is, when we take it down to its most fundamental level, our language, our words, if we can get very specific, so it's the unresolved patterns from the past or stories from the past that keep us stuck, but then it's also the unconscious language, the words that we use every single day, maybe even not expressed, but especially underneath the surface. Mm-hmm. Like if you or anyone listening, I'm sure we've all seen the picture of an iceberg, right? There's a small amount on top. That's really our conscious mind, how we know, how we experience ourselves, etc. But there is this whole world underneath that requires and needs to be nourished and explored. And so the English language is not set up for success. So there's a few building blocks of when we talk about our day-to-day unconscious language that keep us stuck in patterns. One, which I know I shared with you, and I'm working heavily with this 17-year-old on this, and also with my boy. Mm-hmm. And both of them and all clients in all these scenarios give me mirrors into how things that I still need to work on. But one of them, for just some simple takeaways, is what we call soft talk. So soft talk is language, ambiguous language, unclear language, language that would be the opposite of taking, oh, yes, he's got the
Mark England, baby.
Yeah, yeah. So I have my computer's blurry, but there's two things underneath my computer that I look to at all time in between sessions. One is the soft talk keyword sheet, which we'll go into. The second is a picture of my boy and my wife. These are like my two greatest sources of reflection, inspiration, check-in points. And so I'll just list off some of these. So if you're listening to this, my invitation would be to, one, reflect on these words. Two, as you're reflecting on them, see which one you imagine you use the most, right? So soft talk words, so words that are ambiguous, unclear, that really put us in the victim mentality and are the antithesis or the opposite of taking empowered leadership in life. So these are words like probably, perhaps, feels like, guess, maybe, kind of, potentially, hopefully, try, one day, should, almost like, kind of, these are all words, like how often, and this is actually really interesting. It's much more challenging in my experience when we're assessing our language via talking, because in language, like these conversations and stories in our head go so fast. Start paying attention to your text messages and start paying attention to your emails. And then, so you even journal entries, like that's one exercise that I do is I pick up my old journals, which I got a ton behind me. And as an exercise, I'll go through and look at how I was writing years ago, and I'll underline all of the soft talk words in there. And if the only thing that you did was take out the soft talk words, so let's use an example. I think I should probably start working out. Think, probably, should. Those are 3 soft talk words. And as you listen to that, just see how that lands in your body. I think I should probably start working out. Does it feel soft? Does it feel, no, like feels unclear? It feels like, oh, is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it?
See, big time.
Yeah. But now I'm going to start my training program on Monday. Totally different. I've got a much clearer picture. There's ownership, there's responsibility, there's action, there's concrete, there's accountability there. So the thing though with soft talk words, because this is one of the major pillars that keeps us stuck in what we call the victim mentality. When we look at soft talk words, there is a time and a place for them. Like, it's not that they're bad. The whole goal of being aware of soft talk is being aware of how often we're doing the repetition, because that's the mother of all skill, right? We're ingraining that. But then also, when are we using it unconsciously? Because there may be situations where, yeah, you need more time to decide. Like, you and I have 2-ish-year-old sons. So let's say we had a dinner appointment and we're going to get, a meal with friends, and dinner's at 6 p.m. Everyone's arriving at the restaurant. But your son's just pooped his pants, or is having a meltdown. Well, I typically say, 6 o'clock, I'm going to do my best to be there. And if it's coming close, like, hey, I may be a little bit late. I may be 20 minutes late. That is an intentional use, an accurate use of soft talk, right? So there's a time and a place. So the goal is not necessarily to eliminate it. But what Mark England says is, if we can at least bring more mindfulness to our language, soft talk specifically, and if we were to reduce the amount of soft talk words in our writing, in our language, and when we're talking about stories and mindset, it's again, not just the externalized words, it's both the internal and external dialogue that's happening. But if we were to reduce our soft talk words by 50%, it would increase our confidence by double. It would 2x our confidence. And so for any men, and now imagine that at 2 years old. Now, one of the things I've noticed with Luca specifically is, and it's confronting, because I know exactly where he gets this, and he gets it either from me or from Lauren. I go, Luca, you want to go to the park? We go to the park almost every day. Luca, you want to go to the park? Maybe. He loves the fucking park. And he goes, I think so, maybe. And there's some things where he's just saying it in a cute way, but there's also been phrases, where it's literally like parroting me. So he's echoing back words that, and I've recognized certain ones when it's him and when it's actually me. So there's a few other building blocks to that, which we can go into, but I just want to pause and check in with you. But soft talk is, if we were to change soft talk to solid talk, and we were to instill that in our kids, which is largely what I work on with the 17-year-old, with my son, they're easy stuff. Man, imagine having that as a launch pad moving forward.
Beautiful. So the world I'm in, corporate communications training, leadership development, this shows up even at the highest level. I hear kinda and sorta a lot. Ums and uhs are notorious in our, I just said kinda, in our business zeitgeist or vernacular, because we're humans and we're buying time and we're not breathing intentionally when we're speaking, all that. But kinda and sorta has worked its way in as acceptable language. And my hypothesis is that across our culture, but especially in the business world right now, no one wants to be assertive. No one
Mm.
wants to be don't be aggressive. Don't you dare be aggressive, right? That's everyone needs to be tended to, and it's which is it's a double-edged sword again. Like I could appreciate some of the intentions, desired outcomes, what they're going for, but nevertheless, the point is working with energy companies, literally the VP of finance for a company, we would all be like, I know that company, they do some crazy stuff all around the world. And his language was soft. And I'm like,
Mm.
that's so fascinating. That's very interesting. And this is not unique to the level of professional caliber you're in. You're just early in your career. You're the CEO or the executive leadership team. Somehow we've woven it in as an acceptable habit, and I'm often trying to help people break that pattern. And that's
Mm.
what these are patterns. These are breakable. And what I was struck by is thinking, yes, yes, I want my son Leo to be crisp and
Mm.
strong and empowered in his language, partly because I know how it impacts his internal or his experience because of the internal voice in our head, and because the power of our language obviously affects others. And our goal is to say add value, inspire, influence, engage in the professional space, if not everywhere. So how specifically, and I would imagine right now with Luca, some cute words, some cute sentences, you're not really harping on them like, hey, that's not acceptable narrative, of course. But imagine at 5, at 7, at 10, and then up until 18 with this gentleman who's the youngster, the 17-year-old. What can dads do, or how do we do the the narrative sculpting? What is there in terms of a practical approach to this? How do we guide the voice that's inside and coming out of our youngsters?
Yeah. So, well, the first, like, I think this is also age appropriate, right? Like if he's one that's a big thing to keep in mind is like his, like where he's at. The first thing I would say is, and this carries on into no matter what age he's at, is living it ourselves,
Exactly.
right? Because and it was so interesting to me, like when he came out, and when I caught him and just spent time in the hospital room, like I was always fascinated by the soft spot on his head.
Yeah,
Like, the, what is it, the sutures or the cranial bones, whatever they're called, like
right.
don't finish forming. So there's an actual physical softness, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, like he's just an open portal right now.
Yeah.
Like he's an open portal. So I think at any age, especially the younger that a kid is, one, they learn through osmosis. But I was always like, when I would hold him, I would feel like, oh my God, he's genuinely, energetically, whatever, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, he is so open. And that's really like, as his nervous system continues to develop, what's happening is, so when an infant comes out or a baby comes out of mama's belly, this is why mom is the symbol or the representation of ourselves, how we care for ourselves, how we love ourselves. The father, as a general theme, is the first outside influence of the world. So
Mm,
mom, general theme, how we relate, self-esteem, how we love ourselves, father, the world.
makes sense.
But as he comes out, there is no, especially when he was in mama's belly, when we were all in mama's belly, there was no separation between us and mom. So this is why when a baby comes out, like he thinks or she thinks he is one with everything. There's no discernment or distinguishment between him and a cup, between him and a
Mm,
tissue. He thinks he's everything.
yeah, there's no self, so to speak.
Exactly. So
Wow.
the birth experience is known as the first big T trauma, where the baby begins separating from mom. And
Hmm.
as the nervous system continues to, we call that the shock of separation. As the nervous system develops, and as soon as an infant can start identifying he or she is different than the cup, he or she is different than mom, that is really when the ego starts developing. So all of these unconscious patterns actually start in the first 18 months of life. So I'm bringing all this in just to provide some additional context, because the first and foremost thing that, irregardless of what age, is us being aware of it and recognize that our kids are learning what they see from what they see, what they feel, what they intuit, and what they hear. Those are 4 areas of way a child learns. So we, even if we're, for example, being mindful of our language, which would be a major step up for all of us in raising our kids, in my opinion, and how we lead our lives, but it's also how they feel around us. And so if, for example, like I'll give you an example from my own life. So my parents, both mom and dad, are immigrants. They came from Sicily, a small farming town. My dad, self-made, came here with nothing, just a true self-made immigrant story. But as a kid, I never knew, or was aware of, at least consciously, of the challenges we had with money. Just they, and rightfully so, they shielded us or protected us from that. And so I'm in the house right now that the first home my parents bought, and then me and my brother bought it from them.
That's so.
So my bedroom from 4th grade, before that we lived with our grandparents. But right across the hall from my office was the bedroom that largely I grew up in.
Wow.
And I had this major realization moment when I was looking in my relationship with money. We all have money stories, right? We all have a relation, whether, from a disempowering view of money, there's not enough. For me, it was money is confusing. That was the sentence I would say that embodied my relationship to money. But I realized I had this memory, and I don't recall what age, but let's just say plus or minus 9. So pretty young, right?
Okay.
I have this memory of when I was in that bedroom, and I remember my mom and dad yelling, and they were going at it. But as a kid, I remember being so scared, being like hiding behind the door, but I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand. All I heard was mom and dad are fighting. Mom and dad are going at it. And I remember going back, this was a major realization I had, was I may not have quite known the context of that age, but the stories that I started making up in my head is like, did I do something wrong? Is mommy and daddy mad at me? Are they going to get divorced? So all of this stuff that I took on, and it wasn't until later in life that I realized the majority of conflicts that my parents had to do, family for sure, but family and money. And so a lot of the challenges that I've experienced as a man, as I'm learning to keep fathering myself, if you want to say whatever words you want to say, I've had to really not only look at my relationship to money, but how that started. And it wasn't because they said anything to me, but it's largely through the culture, the environment that I grew up in, was the story was money is confusing. So to answer your question, the first and foremost is one, I think that's soft talk, is to be aware of our language.
Mm-hmm.
That's why me and you have these soft talk keywords right in front of us, to live it and to recognize that our children, especially the younger that they are learning from us through osmosis. So that's the first thing. Like, I wouldn't necessarily correct Luca right now. Like, sometimes I might ask him a few more questions, but I'm very aware of his language, and I'm even more so aware of my own check in that regards. Like, oh shit, that's me. There's areas that I can tighten up. Another big one when it comes to the mechanics of language is negations. So negations is words like I can't, I won't, I shouldn't, I couldn't. Right? Now, those can be great starting points to bring clarity. Like, for example, what don't you want? So I don't want to eat bananas, or I don't like eggs. I was telling you before we hopped on, my boy is sick. We didn't sleep much last night, which is a whole nother realm, but all related. And no matter what I gave him, his favorite foods, chicken, apple, sausage. We eat eggs almost every day. Yes. He loves pancakes. So protein, almond flour pancakes. I would make them, give him exactly what he wanted. And the next thing I'm covered in eggs, and nothing's working. This was just a few hours ago. But him saying, I don't want this, even though he just said literally half a second before that he did want it.
Sure.
Those negations are good indicators. Yeah, it's a good starting point. But if the majority of what we focus on is what we don't want, Because if I say, don't, here's another one that just came up. We're working on not throwing. He's in a daycare for a few hours and they're like, he's the happiest kid and he's got a lot of energy and it's so happy, but he throws things. So they're like, can we invite in more? I don't know what they said. They're all Russian. He goes to an all Russian daycare. So there's a little bit of a hard hammer there, in terms of their rules, but they're like, can we have more rules in the house? Can you help teach him no throwing? So I'm totally fine with throwing outside. Like I want him to throw and put him in scenarios like, fuck, have at it, son.
Yeah.
But in the house, and we're working on no throwing.
Yeah. No javelins yet, but one
No,
day.
yeah, exactly. But if I say don't throw, what I've realized is it does work sometimes, the tone, and he's picking up on all that, but it is way more effective if I tell him what I want him to do and the affirmative compared to what I don't want, because what he can and we can at a deep level really interpret the don't. So if I say don't throw, what he hears is throw. So what do I want him to do instead? Okay, roll it. We roll it. That's what I want him to do. And it's been profound for me. I'm like, oh my God, this stuff really works. So one, being aware of it, it's a good starting point. But instead of negations, if we can just focus on, okay, what do we want to experience in this moment? So I don't want a relationship. I don't want to be in a poly relationship. I want to be in a monogamous relationship. That's much more. I don't want to be cheated on. Okay, well, what do you want? You want loyalty, you want faithfulness, you want trust. So negations is another big building block of our language, but it all starts for me with how we lead ourselves and then let that do the majority of the work with our kids.
I feel this is kind of funny because when you say osmosis or intuit, they're learning intuitively. He's throwing stuff, by the way. So but I'll lay on my back. He'll lay on my chest and we'll throw a hacky sack up into the air. And then if I throw it right, it hits the ceiling, right? Or it comes back down, it lands on his chest and he giggles like crazy. I'll give it to him and he tries to throw with both his left and his right and it goes about a foot up and I'm over here grabbing it. And then he's got a big red ball that's kind of like what is that called? Foursquare. Remember playing Foursquare?
Mm,
It's just like a playground ball.
okay.
And so he's kicking that around playing, and then he's got a baseball that he loves. So he's throwing balls, and now I'm going, wait, the baseball inside. Um, you know. And so to your point, you can't just say don't, because what they're actually doing is experimenting with constraints and rules and so forth. And so you say don't, and he's going, well, how serious is this constraint? That's my guess. So instead, to your point, you'd say, hey, we only throw that ball outside.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to play with this ball over here. Play with this ball, or let's play with this instead of don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. So that's huge for me. Just hearing that because it's what we're in the midst of right now. In addition, little Leo, God, he's so freaking cute. Even when he smacks me across the face, and it's this thing where no one in our household is hitting anybody. So I'm going, he's not learning visually about this, but we get fired up about things, I guess. And you almost like if you're in an argument and the kid you go behind closed doors when they're 12 or 9 or whatever age you were, but you kind of take some liberties early on. You're just like having an argument in front of your kid thinking, well, they don't understand. Well, maybe that's it. I don't know. But he's finding some physical force in his world. And you're like, don't hit me, Leo, which has come out of my mouth probably in the last 48 hours, several times. And we're trying to figure out, how do we go? Hey, we don't want to hit people. We don't want to hit people. We use our hands and we're gentle and we play with balls or we feed ourselves, I guess. I'm just riffing here, but I'm like, what should I be saying to perhaps guide him instead of, force him? And then I'm thinking, of course, I want to set the example early on because of what he hears, what he sees, what he feels, and what he kind of inherently notices. But eventually, at what age do we sit our kids down and say, you are the author of your legend, of your story, You have to take agency. You get to take agency over who you are based on the past and who you will become. And it is up to you to decide, to choose, and to speak it into existence. What age is that in your mind? Do you feel like you're going to have that combo with Luca at some point?
Definitely. And I do think there's a time and a place. Like he loves cooking, or he loves like because my wife does meal prep, and that's a big part of her work, and so he always wants to be in the kitchen. He loves like he knows every. So we have a good espresso machine. He knows every single step of the name of the in Italian, the portafilter and the grinding it. So he helps me. I involve him as much as I can in what I do, and he still doesn't quite understand when certain things are hot. And so for me, and we hear that as a classic example, but it's real. Like he burned himself last night, and because he touched the hot espresso machine, even though we've made espresso together hundreds of times, he's like two. So his recollection isn't that good. So in a safe way, sometimes I'll tell him don't, and he'll burn himself, and then we'll sit down together. Okay, what happened, buddy? Do you understand? And he might not understand all the words I'm saying, but he understands enough. And so certain points I'm like, do not touch that, because also the urgency of the moment is like required, and he's still going to need to learn through his own pain teachers as well. There's one of the best books on parenting that I need to reread, to be honest, is because I read it before he came, and now that we're in it, it would land so much differently. But my wife started re-listening to this book, and it's called The Soul of Discipline. Love this book. But in that book, they discuss three primary phases. So in the first phase, I think it's from 1 or 0 to 7, you're in the governor phase. And that's, to your point, the exact thing. We're giving them rules, we're giving them structures, we're giving them constraints, because they're just figuring all of that stuff out. So they need the bumper rails in. So it's structure. It's not structure from an asshole perspective. It's structure with love. Like that type of structure is love, as opposed to just letting kids do whatever it is that they want. Like let kids be kids, in my opinion. And that's what he needs. That's what safety is for most kids, right? So for those ages, it's the governor phase. You're setting rules, boundaries, structure, all that. Then you transition into the gardener phase. And so and I would say what we're talking about right now in the gardener phase, I think that is 8 to 14-ish, if I recall, plus or minus. In that gardener phase, we're letting them have their own experience, right? But we're also nurturing and nourishing and putting them in positions to safely fail and have their own ahas. And then, that blend of both, let's say. So you're gardening, you're planting seeds, you're watering them.
Makes
But
sense.
then after that, you're in the guide phase. You're in the mentor role.
Yeah.
And so in that, now we're actually letting them, and to your point, this is, I would say, even more where that comes through. And that's why I think that 17-year-old, my client, is just such a beautiful opportunity for him to be around other men and his father. But his father has largely served as that role. And by and large, it's been more of the assertive hyperstructure role. And in that moment in the retreat, he got to learn from 11 other men just through witnessing their emotional experiences and listening to him and going through his sweat lodge. And so in that last phase, we really become the guide. So it's more hands off and telling him, in my opinion, the consequences of stuff even more, and letting him develop into his own man as we nudge the best we can. And so I really think I love the simplicity of those three general phases. And if
Hit me
anyone's
with the
interested,
three.
yeah,
One,
the governor,
okay, governor.
phase 1, the gardener phase 2, and then the guide.
Oh, all G's, nice.
All G's, yeah. And it's called The Soul of Discipline. And it's on Audible. You can get it on Audible. Fantastic, fantastic book.
I can see how those. Gosh, this is such a human thing to do, is to try to take the most complex thing in the world and put it into some sort of simplified model like that. But it's very useful. It's very useful, and I can see, of course, there's overlap and
Yeah.
there's some ranges, and then it's depends on your kid and who you are, your place in life, but it's roughly those three realms for sure.
You know what comes up, Dave, is that like when I was reflecting back, like what did I need in that moment when I had heard my parents going at it, right? And there's a really interesting story that I don't think I've ever shared anyone that that someone I had worked with brought up to me. So I do my best not to forget that. Um, but what I would like looking back, like I do think there's a point to not having major heated conversations in front of kids, like to do it in privacy, etc. And I do think in some level, it's important for them to see conflict. And more importantly, which many of us never got, was to actually witness and feel what healthy repair is. So
Wow.
if all we saw was the conflict, then yeah, that's super destabilizing. That's uncertain. I couldn't make sense of it. It's like, what's going on? My whole foundation is being shook. But if, with me and Lauren, like we try to have those to the best of our ability, and I say that consciously, right? Soft talk, acknowledge, to have those conversations in private. But there's also a point when we, quote, mess up or, are too stern with him and we can realize he's shutting down, etc. Like this morning, he was just inconsolable, inconsolable. My wife didn't sleep at all. So I was like, before this podcast, I was like, sweetie, let me take him for 30 minutes, do what you need to do. And I just took him in a different environment. I separated him from the kitchen, which is where all shit went down, took him in another bedroom and I held him and he just lost it. But then there was a switch, like a felt switch
Hmm.
when I was like, do you understand why I can't have you in the kitchen right now? I said it more simply than that.
Hmm.
And he's like, no, just losing it. And I'm like, what did he do? Oh, because he threw the eggs. I was like, we don't throw eggs. Like, you threw the eggs after we told you multiple times to sit down and eat. You wanted eggs and you threw it. And we went through this pattern of just me bringing that up. And then I asked him, I was like, do you understand? And he just literally melted. He's like, yes. And I was like, do you want a hug, buddy? And he's like, yes. And what I find is in these opportunities, the ability to own and explain, he may not understand all the words, but the energy behind it, and then to recreate safety and hold him, that has worked on more times than I can count. And the example that I was about to share earlier is I was connecting with a friend and former retreat participant. He was going through some challenges, family challenges. And what he told me is like, it was since we work out together every few months just to reconnect. And he was telling me, he goes, his boy, it was super scary for him. He goes, he stopped, like he's right around our boys' age, just slightly, he's about 2 years old. He goes, he was making all these great progressions and talking and, saying all these new words, all this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden he just stopped and he almost went nonverbal, almost went completely silent for weeks. And he's like, it was so scary. Like, what is going on? Is something wrong with my son? What is happening? And he had, I think it was a therapist friend or something like that, give him some advice. And basically what was going on is the challenges that he and his wife were going through with the family, they were going at it, right? They were going at it and there wasn't repair going on. But then also, especially at that age, what do kids want? What is love? Love is connection. Like that is, I would always say, the currency of fatherhood is presence. That is the currency that a child understands. Presence is connection, is love, is being seen, is being acknowledged. Because if we're not present or we don't give our kids attention, then that's basically death. That's abandonment. That's like my whole survival is being threatened. So what was happening was they were having all of those conversations in front, and basically the kid, their son, felt let's see, what was the words that he used? Was just starved for attention, and it was all about them two. And he felt separate from the family. So the advice they were given was to have those conversations, but have those primarily after he goes to sleep. And then the other thing is spend a week with him where you're just super loving on him. Take a trip, just spend abundant time with him. And in just about a week, he came completely back. And he was like, I think it went on for like 3 weeks. So imagine you have a kid who's speaking, who's advancing, and then all of a sudden retreats inward. Like that would be one of the scarier things that I was just be like, what is going on? But
Sure.
really, he was starved for attention, and it was all about mom and dad. So I think, yes, there's a time and a place to be strategic. Repair is really helpful, reconnection, but then also recognizing when the impact of what it is having in that situation, he was completely shutting down.
Wow, man. Dude, I'm so struck by this notion of repair because inevitably our kiddos are going to see disruption
Mm,
or confrontation.
mm,
To be perfect and remove those completely out of our interactions, not realistic. But to show them repair, um, I can't think of a time I've ever heard of this idea to actually show, well, to repair it and then to talk through the repair. And I was almost thinking about this in a couple different capacities. How often are we explicit with what we share with our kiddos? For instance, they can learn just by example,
mm,
or on behalf of comprehension and on behalf of language development. Sometimes I'm walking Leo through very explicitly, like, hey, I'm down here, I'm making something. This is called wood. These are called nails. This is a saw. This is the drill. We open this little case up and we take a drill bit out. So I'm actually step by step by step explicitly
mm,
cueing him. Similarly, I wonder if it's valuable to if a kiddo of any age really, but if they see us in confrontation or through the walls, they hear us through confrontation, and you can sense that there's a disruption in their realm. Is it valuable to say, "Hey, did you happen to hear mom and I arguing the other day? Did that get that was that kind of scary? Was that tough? Did that have you wondering some things?" Like no dad 20 years ago was
mm.
likely doing that. They were just grinding, doing their thing, living in their current cultural rhythms and modes and so forth. And here we are, intentional fathers, striving to, be great dads. And I wonder if there's something about acknowledging it and then saying, well, here's how your mommy and I handled it. Or maybe mom's there and we're talking it through and we're being, sometimes you're going to run into confrontation and people's voices are going to go up. Ideally, we don't operate that way. But if it does happen, the 50% to complete the process is actually to have a repair conversation. So I just think being explicit about the experience and the you know the exchange, even the front side, the confrontation, sure, but this repair notion is huge. There's plenty of examples where kids are going to see confrontation with maybe their parents' relationship and the external world, but when do they see the repair and see the cycle complete itself? That's powerful right there.
When you were sharing that, just because I'm still going back to that prior memory, like when I heard you say like, "Hey, did you hear mommy and daddy whatever yelling?" And was that confusing or, did that stir something, whatever the language is? Like to me, that felt super good.
Wow.
Like, damn, fuck, like that would feel so good. And then I think the last piece of that in explaining time, it doesn't need to be every scenario, but like when it's deemed necessary or helpful, say like, hey, and mommy and daddy still love each other.
Mm.
We're
And
okay.
you.
And we love you. Yeah. And we love you. And when I do that with him, it is remarkable, like truly remarkable to see the shift in him and how much from way upregulated to calm. And he'll say, "Yeah, yeah." I was like, "Do you understand? Do you understand?" "Yeah, and mommy and daddy love each other. Mommy and daddy love you." "Yeah, yeah." And how much of that conceptually does he understand? I don't know. But from a felt sense, like his nervous system doesn't lie. And that's also the important thing too, because when I was saying the infant children learn via osmosis, they also learn via our nervous systems because as a child, especially the younger the child is, they're always co-regulating to our environment. So when we talk about what's inherited and when we think about legacy, we often think about what is passed down wealth-wise, and that's one form of legacy. but also our children are going to be inheriting our nervous systems, breathing rhythms, our stories, our language. And so if we're completely dysregulated in a moment, whether we're having an outward argument, like that's a very easy thing to come through. But if we're totally dysregulated, and like I remember when I think you may know this, but like one of the things that I was obsessed with learning because it was fun and weird and strange, and I was always curious, but was Mongolian throat singing.
Mm.
And so I did lessons for like a year, and I was just thought it was just something for me. Like I wanted to learn how to use my voice, and I love that type of music. And I was like, I'm going to do this. Forget what everybody else thinks or what I think everyone else thinks.
Mm.
And when he was born, it was remarkable because my wife, Lauren, can soothe him via touch. I can soothe him via touch too, but touch and breastfeeding, I don't have breasts. Like I didn't have that as a tool,
Mm.
right? You bottle once in a while, but this just wasn't a tool I had.
Yep.
But what I realized super early on was when he was so dysregulated, I would throat sing skin to skin.
Amazing.
I'm telling you, Dave, remarkable. And it got so effective that within a matter of seconds, full on screaming to completely calming down. And what I realize is one, that tone and that vibration is so just primal or deep, but also the calmer that I can be, like I would feel him, his nervous system switching into mine. And so in those moments, yeah, we're intellectually explaining, asking him, giving him space, reminding him that he's loved, that we're loved. But then also in those scenarios, if we can bring a calm energy, right? A tone of just, hey, buddy, I understand. How are you feeling right now? Was that confusing? Mommy and daddy love each other. Do you understand? Like that tone and that vibration. I think that's equally as powerful
Yes.
as the words themselves, because words in and of themselves are just words, but words carry meaning, words carry vibration, words carry tone and emotion.
Right.
So if we can bring that state, bring our state, and when we can practice the state enough, so if we want to, bring more presence to our fatherhood or in our relationship, the way that we turn the state of presence into a trait is through practice, is through more time under tension. Use the lifting analogy, more time under tension in that state so that it now becomes the new norm and it becomes a trait. So the more that I can be aware of where I'm at, regulate myself, be mindful as much as possible with where I'm human too. But then when I'm with him, bring it down, bring it calm, lower my voice, slow it down. I've seen it so many times immediately begin shifting him.
Beautiful. I've got a little line, a little lyric that I'll sing to Leo to get him to go to bed. And I'm not a good singer. I've never written a song, but I now sing it consistently when it's bedtime, and he shifts. He
Wow.
shifts. And
So
there
cool.
is something
So
about the
cool.
words, probably my voice, and then me regulating myself, which is an invitation for him to adjust himself as well. There's something there, big time. So take a couple breaths with me because that was solid, and I want to maybe I'm just thinking about time. I have 3, 4, 5 minutes at the very end that I want to explore a final thought with you. But between now and then, if you just note where we're at with time, and I want to ask you, shifting gears a bit, about the weight of
Mm.
fatherhood, the weight of manhood. And I've been playfully calling some of these inquiries the bear fights that we are faced with as men. And we deal with a lot. We manage a lot. We bear the weight of a lot of things. And I'm rarely calling my buddy up. I can think of a friend named Thaddeus. We confide in each other to a degree here and there. We'll catch up and we'll say how it's going and we'll be honest in those moments. But I could easily call up multiple friends, you included, and be like, dude, I'm kind of sad today, or I'm rough today. But I don't. Partly because I don't want to feed it. I want to go, I want to go conquer it, and I also got other things I got to do. So a lot of times we're internalizing a lot.
Mm.
And we're just, think about the responsibilities, the duties, protect and provide and be present and do that with our spouses and build our businesses and take care of the temple. There's a lot. So will you share just a bit about the weight of fatherhood, of manhood, and what's currently present in your realm and how you're sorting it out?
One, my belief is that's totally normal. Like when I look at the fathers that I respect, they're largely the ones that bear that weight. They're the ones that take that on with intention, with like, that's a part of our role, in my opinion. That's what we're like, yeah. And there's healthy and unhealthy expressions of that. But let me just first off by say, like, that's my role. I'm the leader of my family. I mean, I don't say this to sound poetic. It's really an honor. I get to serve that role. Holy shit, what an honor. I get to lead my family. I get to lead my son. I get to take these things on. And so for me, it's something I'm really proud to do. Like I'm the main financial provider. Every relationship's different. And it's really challenging to do that while be as present as possible with Luca and do all the things for sure. So one I would say is, if you're really stepping up as a father, as a leader, and taking real responsibility and ownership, yeah, there's going to be a burden that comes with that. And I think that's actually really healthy, in my opinion. The challenge ends up coming is when we suffer in silence. So there's one thing around taking on, really, when it comes to stepping into more and more of a mature man or stepping into more whole version of ourselves or stepping into elderhood, it's synonymous with responsibility. The more responsibility that we can take on as men, for me, that's one of the most beautiful expressions of us living our best life. Like, what is our best? At the recent retreat, we had Tim Corcoran, who's, I was telling you before we logged on, he's in his 70s. He grew up on a reservation from 10 years old. And at 10 years old, he went in a sweat lodge with some elders, and he knew immediately what he wanted to do. So over 60 years, this man has been living and guiding men's work for over 50 years, rites of passage, initiation experiences, nature connection, survival skills. He was a tracker, finding missing people in the mountains. Like, what a wild, and one of the things that he shared is most men don't even know what their real best is. Like, what's your best? What's your effing best? And most men really don't even know what that level is. Dude. So if we're really being honest with ourselves, that question. So in part, I think it's like there's a whole realm, which I'll go into. I love what you said about playfulness and compassion. That's really deep medicine we need too. But I want to start off by saying, like, if you're feeling the burden of responsibility, like, I take my hat off to you. Like, and you're doing your best and you're showing up as your best, and that comes with responsibilities and duties and roles. Hell yeah. Like, those are the men that, like you, or people that I really respect. The people that I respect the most are the ones with the great responsibility, but who have found a way to live in that high level of responsibility, but to not necessarily collapse in it. And if they do collapse in it, to have the courage to ask for help. What is it? The stat right now is 80% of men today commit suicide. And this is a really, really real statistic. And unfortunately, I'm very close to that. Like, I understand that, and it's so painful. And I've even had wives or partners call me or email me, whatever. This happened on more than one occasion. I found my husband crying in the shower. What do I do? And when I hear that, and that's happened again on more than one occasion, even with people really close to me, it effing breaks my heart. Because so much of that, because either what we've been modeled, whatever it is, whatever the stories are, whatever the environment was, it either, sharing feelings is weak, or, don't cry, dust it off, whatever it was, those formidable stories, men are by and large taught that they need to suck it up. And yeah, grit is important, resilience is important, but there also becomes a point where we really need to be honest with ourselves when being surrounded by a circle of good men. Good men is some of the deepest nourishment we can have. And that's not to say, like, this is also why, one, selfishly, I lead this work in part because it's the greatest thing that I feel I could be doing is helping men stretch and transform and learn to love themselves, lead more powerfully, accept more responsibility. But also, as leading it, I get to stay in it. Like, I've got my own 1 or 2 men's group. I assist a men's group and then I lead men's groups. So I'm constantly in it. And so, with the heaviness of stuff that comes up, there's a lot of men not only struggling in silence, but in really dark places. And one of the things that I've been reminded of with this work is sometimes, and not sometimes, oftentimes, it literally only takes one word or just simply to be heard. Yeah. And that can unlock so much. It happened at the retreat multiple times, and things that you would see men on the surface, and you see this all the time with the work that you do as well. We hold so much, but at the same level, we don't have anyone to hold us. And for me, it's that balance of, can we be the samurai, right? Can we sharpen that sword and be willing to go into battle and live in integrity and have a code? And also, can we also nurture that part of us that really needs help or support or guidance? And that doesn't mean we need to be a puddle sometimes, but if we can just have a space where, I mean, your whole world is communication, and more specifically, listening. Real listening, like real fucking listening, is without the need to fix or to change or to even give advice. Like, as men, we're constantly searching by default to fix, to change, to adjust. Just really to listen, man, and to be with another man in here without offering really much of just other than your presence. It has blown my heart wide open in more times than I can count. And so it is that blend of like being hard when we need to be hard, but also recognizing that softness, especially with kids, is invaluable as well.
And I remember, just to bring some lightness to this, there was some times when you were coaching me where you were so neutral by design. Yeah, there was no reaction.
Yeah.
There was no assessment.
Yeah.
You were simply present. And then you jokingly say, well, sometimes I'm so good at it that sometimes my wife is like, are you even listening? Because I'm listening so well. Or are you like, hey, where are you? You know what I mean? I think
She calls it the empty mirror.
the
Yeah.
empty mirror. That's
Yeah.
what it was, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. You're right. You're right. Gosh, to be the strong, bold, vigorous man that we're all striving to be in theory for ourselves, for our kids, is one thing, but to also acknowledge life can get dark and wicked and trying, and to just bear it is not acceptable. It's perhaps doable in the short to intermediate term, but eventually it's gonna collapse you. So to confide in one another, and I would just say, anyone listening, I mean, even if I don't know you, hit me. Even if you don't know Mike, hit him up. Find your guys. And as you said, it's not necessarily a puddle of emotion, although perhaps it is, but it is expressing where you're at, processing it, honoring it in a sense, and integrating it into your world, and then carrying on as we need to do. So anyone who's had some hard times historically or recently, um, perhaps that's the first next step, it's a courageous step too, I believe, right? Okay, that was good. Could have gone a couple places there. Like that a lot. With our remaining time, I'm going to invite you, Mike, to just picture the future. Maybe close your eyes. This is decades down the road. And if you and Lauren have the good fortune of, or the good intention of adding to the family, picture Luca with a sibling or two. But Luca's there sitting around a fire with some friends, telling tales of the father that he had. You're not in the room. Perhaps you've moved on to a different realm. And Luca is honoring you by sharing three things that are most significant and special to him. What do you hope those three things are?
So the first thing is my father was there. Like my father was there, not just like there physically, but was really there. So presence. So my father listened to me or wanted to spend time with me. That's another thing. Like this ain't an obligation. This is a choice. I want to be his papa. I want to spend time with him. So my father wanted to be there with me and he was there. He was present. The second thing is integrity. Like when my father did what he said he's going to do. If my father made an agreement with a man, it's what with Tim, when I put the deposit down, he's like, so you're going to do the retreat? This was months ago. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, do you have a contract? He's like, you're going to do the retreat? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I don't need any contract. It was one of the first times, like he's old school. And that he's like, that's my bond. That's what I learned from my grandfather. And so my father lived a life of integrity, not perfection. And if I was out of integrity, I owned up to it. So I honor my word. I did what I said I was going to do. And then the third thing is, I would love him to remember me for giving him the opportunity to have new experiences and to play. Right? So like remembering dad as playful and us doing fun stuff, camping stuff. Like now that I've gone to Tim's Lane, he's got he works a lot with kids and rites of passage and scout school and nature connection and the earth caretaker way. And like, I want to do those things with my son, which is cool because you can do it father and son. So like my father took me places and we had fun doing it. So I'd say like fun and adventure in the same realm, integrity. And then when he was with me, he was there. Like that's a good life. That's a damn good life for me if he says something even remotely close to that.
Fail. No doubt about it. Mike Salemi, thank you for your time, brother. This was maybe, I don't know, 60 plus minutes. It could have been 10 hours. I could keep going with you. We probably should do around 2 or 3. I just appreciate your new friendship, your stewardship in my world as a coach, as a mentor, and as a confidant, and really, really grateful for this conversation.
Likewise, man. Super fun. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
I'll catch you on the next one, all right? See you, Mike.
Peace, buddy.
There you have it. You know, I believe the world is calling on us as fathers to step up and be stewards and shepherds of those around us. The times are interesting and they are demanding more out of us than perhaps we once realized. It's because of that I want to celebrate and honor the ultimate role of fatherhood and set up dads for maximum impact. So thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe so you can catch the coming episodes. And above all, share this episode with a father you admire. See you on the next one.
Go there, here we go now. Oh yeah, the ultimate roll now. Oh yeah, here we go now. Whoa,